The family meeting was held on a Saturday morning at Uncle Bart's house in Ikeja, a large compound with a tiled gate, a board security guard, and a sitting room big enough to host a small conference. By 10 o'clock, 17 relatives had arrived. Aunties in their best wrappers, uncles in stiff shirts, cousins who came for the drama dressed as concern. 2 family elders who had driven from Enugu specifically for this, which told Zara immediately that Uncle Bart had been organizing this for longer than 1 week. Zara arrived with her parents and Tunde. Her mother held her arm walking in, which could have meant support or could have meant please do not embarrass us. Tunde walked beside her with his jaw set in the way that meant he was nervous but would not show it. Kike was not there. Family meetings in this culture were closed to outsiders. But Kike had spent the previous night with Zara, going over every point, every question, every possible argument until Zara had it all inside her like a stone, solid and settled. David had also given her 1 piece of paper. A single page, folded in her bag. Uncle Bart sat at the head of the room in the way that made it clear who was in charge without him having to say so. To his left were the 2 elders from Enugu, Elder Nweze and Elder Obi, both old enough to remember things nobody else did and serious enough to believe those old things still fully applied. To Uncle Bart's right were 3 of his closest friends and associates, men who had no formal role but whose presence made the room feel like a courtroom with a predetermined verdict. Zara's family was directed to sit across from all of them. Like a table. Like a hearing. Elder Nweze opened with prayer. Then Uncle Bart took over. He spoke for 10 minutes without addressing Zara directly. He talked about family honor. About the Okafor name. About what it meant to come from a culture where community was everything and individual selfishness was poison. He talked about the opportunity being offered. He used the word opportunity 4 times in 5 minutes, and he painted Chief Adeyemi as a good man, a generous man, a man of standing who had honored this family with his interest. He talked about Zara's father's situation without saying the word debt, dancing around it carefully while making sure everyone in the room understood it. Then he looked at Zara. "We are here today," he said, "because this young woman needs to hear from her family. She needs to understand the weight of what she is refusing." Elder Obi leaned forward. "Young woman," he said, his voice carrying the gravity of all his years. "I knew your grandfather. He was a man who understood sacrifice. He understood that sometimes you give up what you want so that the people you love can have what they need. That is not weakness. That is love." Zara listened to all of it. She did not interrupt. She did not shift in her seat or roll her eyes or show any of the reactions she was feeling in her chest. She had decided the night before that she would let them finish. Completely. She would sit still and listen because she understood that what she was about to say would land harder in silence than in argument. When Elder Obi finished, the room looked at Zara. She took 1 breath. "Thank you," she said. "All of you. I mean that genuinely. I know that everyone in this room believes they are protecting me and protecting this family. I know that. I don't question your love." She paused. "I question this decision. And I need to ask you some questions too." Uncle Bart frowned slightly. "This is not a negotiation. Chief Adeyemi was married before," Zara said. Not loudly. Just clearly. His first wife. What happened to her? Silence. One of the aunties shifted. Uncle Bart's expression did not change, but something moved behind it. "She left the marriage," he said. "People leave marriages. That is not a crime." "Why did she leave?" "That is private family business." "Whose family?" Zara asked. "His or mine?" She looked at Elder Nweze. "Elder, with respect, if you were giving your own daughter to a man, and that man's first wife left without explanation, would you not ask why?" 2. Elder Nweze was quiet. That silence was more valuable than any agreement. Zara reached into her bag and took out the paper David had given her. She did not unfold it yet. She just held it. "I met someone this week," she said. "The sister of Chief Adeyemi's first wife." She watched the room react to this, small reactions, quickly controlled, but there. "She told me that her sister did not leave that marriage freely. She told me that her sister spent 2 years becoming someone she did not recognize. She gave an interview 7 years ago that nobody in this family was ever told about. Uncle Bart's composure cracked, just slightly. A woman's bitter story is still a story, Zara said. And before this family offers me to a man, I should be allowed to hear all the stories about him. Not just the ones that serve the deal. A heavy silence. Zara's father, who had been looking at the floor since they arrived, slowly raised his head. What deal? Papa Okafor said. The room shifted. That question had not been expected from him. Uncle Bart looked at his brother carefully. What do you mean? You said this is about Zara. About the family. About an opportunity. Papa Okafor's voice was quiet but different now, the voice of a man who had been choosing smallness for a long time and was briefly, painfully choosing otherwise. But I want to understand. What are you getting from this arrangement, Bart? Because you have never done anything purely for someone else in all the years I have known you. The room went electric. One of Uncle Bart's associate friends cleared his throat. An auntie murmured something. Uncle Bart looked at his brother with an expression that was wounded and warning at the same time. You are my brother. Yes, Papa Okafor said. I am. And I should have asked you this question the day you brought this to me instead of keeping it from my own daughter for 3 weeks. He looked at Zara and something settled in his face. Something that had been loose for a long time finally finding its place. I am sorry, he said to her. Simple and direct. You deserve to be told first. Zara felt something loosen in her chest. She had not known until that exact moment how much she needed to hear those words from him. Tunde, sitting beside her, quietly reached over and bumped his shoulder against hers. She bumped back. Uncle Bart stood up. He was very good at using his size. This family is falling apart in front of elders because a 22-year-old girl does not know what is good for her. She knows exactly what is good for her, Mama Zara said. Everyone looked at her. Mama Zara was a woman who expressed herself mostly through cooking and quiet suffering. She had not raised her voice in this house in 20 years. But she was raising it now, and her hands were shaking, and her voice was shaking, and she was still speaking. I cried all week, she said. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of your opinion, Bart. Afraid of the elders. She pressed her hands flat on her knees to stop them shaking. But my daughter sat in front of me and asked me one question last night. She said, Mama, if the situation were reversed, if someone had come to your father's house when you were 22 and told you that you were going to marry a man you had never chosen, what would you have wanted your mother to do? She stopped. Looked at Elder Louise. Looked at Uncle Bart. I would have wanted my mother to stand up. The room was completely still. Elder Louise looked at his hands for a long time. Then he looked at Elder Obi. Something passed between them, the kind of look shared by people who have lived long enough to know when they are being handed a truth they should not ignore. Elder Louise spoke. His voice was slow and weighted, but not unkind. Zara, he said. In my time, the tradition was clear. The family decides, and the child trusts the family's wisdom. That is how we understood love and protection. He paused. But I have lived long enough to know that wisdom must grow. Wisdom that cannot change is not wisdom. It is just stubbornness wearing a chief's cap. A small murmur moved through the room. This young woman has not been disrespectful. She has asked questions. Good questions. Questions that should have been asked before any of us sat here today. Uncle Bart looked as if the floor had tilted beneath him. Elder Obi nodded slowly. The tradition we carry is meant to protect the family, he said. If following this tradition in this case means pushing a young woman into a man's house against her will, and that man has questions around him that nobody has answered, then we are not protecting the family. We are sacrificing one of its members for comfort. Uncle Bart made one final attempt. The debts are real, he said, and he was looking at his brother now, not at the elders. The financial pressure is real. I was trying to solve a problem. Then solve it like a brother, Papa Okafor said. Not like a businessman. The words hit so quietly and so precisely that the room held its breath for 3 full seconds. The meeting broke up an hour later without the conclusion Uncle Bart had planned. No agreement was made. No pressure was formally applied. Elder Nweze, before leaving, had placed his hand briefly on Zara's head, not in blessing, exactly, but in something that felt close to acknowledgement. Elder Obi had spoken privately with Uncle Bart in the corridor, and whatever was said in that conversation made Uncle Bart emerge with a slightly smaller expression than the one he had entered with. Chief Adeyeme's name was not officially withdrawn that day. But it was not pressed forward either. And in the dynamics of this kind of family negotiation, stopping forward momentum was almost the same as stopping the thing entirely. Kike was parked outside Uncle Bart's compound. She had been there since 9:30, eating a meat pie in her car, waiting. When Zara walked out, Kike leaned out the window and searched her face. Zara gave a small nod. Kike punched her steering wheel once in quiet celebration. David texted 30 seconds later. "How did it go?" Zara typed back, "The right people spoke." He replied, "That's all it ever takes." 3 weeks later, Zara got a call from Sandra. She had not expected to hear from her again. "I heard something went differently in your family," Sandra said. Zara frowned. "How did you know?" "People talk." A pause. "I just wanted to call and say, you did what my sister could not do, because she had nobody to do it with her." Sandra's voice was steady but full of something underneath it. Maybe if one person had stood up then, things would have been different. Zara was quiet for a moment. "Sandra," she said, "is your sister okay now? Where is she?" "She is okay," Sandra said. "She is in Abuja. She has rebuilt. It took years, but she rebuilt." "I am glad." "Me too." A small pause. "Keep building your own life, Zara. It is yours." The scholarship letter arrived on a Thursday morning. Zara was in the printing shop, adjusting a design on her laptop, when the notification came. She read it twice before she let herself feel it. Full scholarship. Design school in Abuja. January intake. She told Tunde first. He screamed so loudly in the flat that Mama Zara ran from the kitchen thinking something had broken. When Zara told her parents that evening, her father sat with the letter in his hands for a long time. He read every word. Then he set it down on the table and looked at his daughter with the face of a man who understood something he had almost gotten badly wrong. "You are going," he said. Not a question. "Yes," she said. He nodded. And then, quietly, he smiled. It was not a large smile. But it was genuine. And genuine was worth more than anything large or performed. Uncle Bart never fully forgave the family meeting. He became cooler, more distant, less present at gatherings. He did not sever the relationship, family was family, but the warmth he had never truly offered now had an official absence. Zara found she could breathe easier without his approval filling the room. The debts, without Chief Adeyeme's money, remained a real problem. Papa Okafor and his brother worked out a payment arrangement. Bart, whatever his faults, honored commitments when they were directly presented to him. It was slow and undramatic. No single miraculous solution. Just the ordinary difficult work of a family sorting through real problems honestly, for perhaps the first time. Kike threw a small party in her flat the week before Zara left for Abuja. 7 people. Jollof rice, the smoky kind from a party pot, not the stove. A small Bluetooth speaker playing music that was too loud for the flat but not loud enough for the moment. David came. He brought a card that said congratulations on the front and had 3 lines of his own writing inside. "You were right to refuse. You were right to speak. Don't forget either of those things." Mama Zara helped Zara pack. She folded every piece of clothing with the deliberate care of someone trying to say things their mouth could not fully manage. At some point she stopped folding and just looked at her daughter. "When I was your age," she said, "I did not have your courage." Zara shook her head. "You stood up at the meeting, Mama." "Late," her mother said. "Still counts," Zara said. Mama Zara held her face in both hands for a moment. The way mothers do when they are trying to memorize you before you go somewhere they cannot follow. Then she went back to folding, and neither of them said anything else, and it was enough. On her last night in Lagos, Zara sat on the balcony alone. The city did what Lagos always did, hummed and flickered and refused to be quiet, generators and horns and the distant sound of someone's music and the smell of something frying somewhere below. She had grown up inside this noise. It was her first language. She thought about Chief Adeyemi. Not with bitterness. He had not done anything to her directly. She had refused before he could. She thought about his first wife's sister, sitting in that restaurant in Bagada with her practiced calm and her 3 sentences that had been sitting in an obscure corner of the internet waiting for someone to find them. She thought about how many girls had not found those sentences. How many had walked into arrangements nobody asked them about and spent years in rooms where they became strangers to themselves. She thought about her father saying I'm sorry in a room full of people and how that had cost him something real. She thought about Elder Nwi's hand on her head. Wisdom that cannot change is not wisdom. It is just stubbornness wearing a chief's cap. And she thought about Tunde, 16 years old and gap-toothed, sitting beside her on a dark balcony eating nothing and saying nothing and staying anyway. She was going to miss him most of all. She would not tell him that because it would embarrass him. But she would miss him most of all. She opened her phone. The scholarship acceptance was still on the screen where she had left it. She had read it so many times the words had stopped looking like words and started looking like proof of something. Not proof that she was special. She had never thought she was special. Proof that her life was hers. That was the thing about saying no that nobody warned you about. People treat it like an ending, the door slamming, the relationship breaking, the family fracturing, the deal collapsing. And yes, sometimes things break. That is real. Zara would not lie to you and say nothing broke. But no is also a beginning. It is the moment the room clears enough for you to finally see where you actually want to go. She looked at the Lagos skyline, orange and blue and messy and lit from 100 different directions at once. She took a breath. She went inside to finish packing. Epilogue. Zara graduated from design school 18 months later. Top of her class. Her final project, a series of digital illustrations exploring the stories of women who had spoken up when speaking up cost them something, was featured in a Lagos Arts magazine and shared 12,000 times online. One of the people who shared it was Sandra. Her caption was 4 words, "This is for her." Tunde passed his WAEC exams with distinction. When Zara asked what he wanted to study, he said law, because someone should know how to protect people properly. He said it casually, like it was not a big statement. But she heard what was underneath it. Papa Okafor paid off the last of the family debt 14 months after the meeting. He called Zara the evening he made the final payment. They did not talk about the meeting or Chief Adeyemi or Uncle Bart. They just talked. For 40 minutes, about nothing in particular. But the ease of the conversation was the thing. The ease was new. Uncle Bart eventually came around. Not all the way. Some damage is permanent and that is the truth. But at a family Christmas 2 years later, he sat across from Zara and said, without apology but with something that gestured in that direction, "I hear the design school went well." Zara said yes. He nodded once. They ate Christmas rice together and the moment passed. That was as far as it went. Sometimes that is as far as it goes. You accept it and you move forward anyway. Kike never stopped being Kike. She started her own small agency. She hired Zara for her first major client project. They worked across WhatsApp calls at midnight the way they always had, Kike blunt, Zara steady, both of them building something that belonged to them. And Mama Zara. Mama Zara started telling her story at her women's fellowship group at church. Not the version where she was quiet and afraid. The version where she stood up, however late. She told it because other women in that room had daughters. And daughters needed their mothers to show them what standing up looked like before the moment came when they needed to do it themselves. She was not a loud woman. She did not raise her voice. But she kept talking. And that was enough. Some people will tell you that saying no is the most dangerous thing you can do. They are right. It is dangerous to the version of your life that was chosen for you without your permission. Say it anyway. Your life was never theirs to decide.